this video tutorial, we're going to be creating a real-time chat application with Laravel, Vue.js, and Pusher. To get started, let's go ahead and jump over into our terminal. Before we start, I want to make sure the necessary programs are installed. So first, let's do composer-v. Now that we know Composer is installed and we have version 2.0.6, let's make sure that npm is installed. We'll do npm-v. And we can see we have 6.14.9. The last thing I want to check is for php-v. And we have PHP version 7.4.3. As long as you have these three things installed, you should be good to continue. Let's go ahead and clear this out. To create our new Composer project, we'll use composer create-project --prefer dist and then Laravel/Laravel and then the name of our project. For this, I'm just going to use chat app. Now that my new Laravel project's been created, let me clear this and let's cd into our chat app project. Now let's jump over and check out our project in VS Code. I'm going to navigate to my project. It should be in my home directory in a folder called chat app, and we're going to open up the entire folder. So I'm in my .env file. That should be in the root. And here we are, we're .env. Now that our Composer project's created, let's go ahead and connect it to a database. I've already set up a database before I started this, so if you haven't created a database yet, go ahead and do that now. And then we're going to change our database connection, our username, and our password so that our application can connect to the database. For mine, I just called my database chat app. My username is going to be Scriptster, and my password is just password. If you're doing this in production, make sure to choose something a little more secure. Go ahead and save that, and let's jump back over into the terminal. The next thing I want to do is install Laravel Sanctum. To do that, we're going to use Composer again. So composer require Laravel/Sanctum. Now that Laravel Sanctum's been added to our project, let's clear this out, and let's publish the Laravel Sanctum configuration and migration files. To do that, we'll use PHP artisan vendor publish -- provide equals, and then inside of double quotes, we're going to do Laravel/Sanctum/Sanctum service provider. So you can see we just created some new database migrations and a new config/Sanctum file. Let's check that out in VS Code. Inside of our config, we should have a new file called Sanctum, and that's this right here. Let's jump back over to the terminal. I'm going to go ahead and clear this out. Now that Sanctum's all set up and configured, we're going to use Jetstream Inertia to get our project scaffolding up. And what that's going to do is it's basically going to set up our user login and authentication system, as well as some of our Blade templates and Vue templates. To do that, we'll use composer require Laravel/Jetstream. Now that we've included it into our project, I'm going to clear this and let's install it. So we'll use PHP artisan Jetstream install and then Inertia. Now that we've successfully installed Jetstream Inertia into our project, I'm going to clear this out. I want to run PHP artisan migrate since we just created some new migration files. Now that we've ran our migrations, let's clear that, and I want to run npm install to install all of our package.json dependencies. Now that all our dependencies have been added, let's clear this out, and I want to create the Jetstream views. So to do that, we'll use PHP artisan vendor publish -- tag equals Jetstream -views. Now that we've created all of our views, I want to clear this out. I'm going to run PHP artisan serve to spin up a web server environment for my application to run on. So let's go ahead and press enter. Now you can see starting Laravel development server. I'm going to go ahead and copy this URL. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to open up a new tab, and this time I want to do npm run hot. Now what that's going to do is it's going to watch my project folder for changes. Anytime a change happens, it's going to recompile my app.js file, and then it's going to automatically refresh my Google Chrome browser. So go ahead and press enter. Now we should be good to go. Let's open up our Chrome browser. I'm just going to paste in that website. Now here we go. We have our default Laravel installation, which gives you all of this right here. But then if you'll notice, we also have login and register up here. That's what Jetstream Inertia did for us. It created a login page which is right here. And this is the Jetstream logo. And then if we go back, we also have this register page where we can create a new user. We didn't have to write any of this code. We didn't have to create these Vue files. It's all created for us. So let's go ahead and register a new user. I'm going to click on name. And for this, I'm just going to use Scriptster. For email, I'm just going to use scriptster@scriptster.com. And then for my password, I'll just use password. And then go ahead and click register. If you want, you can save this password. I'm not going to, so I'm just going to click on the X. Now this was all created for us using Laravel Jetstream, which is what you see right here. It automatically gave us this little drop down over here. We click on profile. We can see it automatically created this profile information view. We have our update password if we want to. We have our two-factor authentication. We also have browser sessions and then delete account. This is a really quick way to get up and running without having to jump through a lot of hoops. By default in Laravel 8, they automatically include Tailwind CSS. So that's why we see this nice fancy looking dashboard when we log in without having to write any CSS at all. Now that users are able to log in and create accounts, let's jump back over to the terminal and get a few things set up. I'm going to create a new tab. Since we're creating a chat app, I'm going to go ahead and create the model for a chat room. So we'll use PHP artisan make model, and I'm just going to call my model chat room, and I'm going to put a -m to create a migration file. I'm going to do the same thing again, except for this time, instead of chat room, all my chat rooms are going to have chat messages. So let's create another migration and model for chat message. All right, now that we've created our models and migrations, let's jump back over to VS Code. And I want to edit these migration files. So I'm going to go into database, migrations, and then these last two are the two that I just created. So this is create chat rooms table, and this is create chat messages table. So let's do the chat rooms table first. So for the chat room table, I just want to create a column called name. So to do that, we'll just do table string name, and then add a semicolon at the end. Now let's save that, Command S to save, and then let's do our create chat messages. So for this, I'm going to add 3 new columns. The first column I want to add, we'll do table integer, and then for the integer, I'm going to call it chat room ID, and this is going to be the ID of the chat room that these chat messages belong to. Go ahead and add the semicolon. I'm going to do another integer, so we'll do table integer, and this time it's just going to be user underscore ID, and this is going to be the ID of the user who is creating this message. Go and put the semicolon at the end, and the last one I'm going to do, we'll say table medium text, and we'll just call this the message, and that'll contain the message that our users send back and forth. Go ahead and save that, Command S, and that should be it for our migration files. Let's go ahead and jump back over to the terminal. Let's clear this out, and let's do PHP artisan migrate. Great, so we just ran our migration files. We'll clear this out again. Now by default, I want to have a few chat rooms created for my application, so I'm going to create a seeder file. To do that, we'll do PHP artisan make seeder, and we're going to call it chat room seeder, and then just press enter. Let's go ahead and add some information to that seeder file. We'll jump back over to VS Code. We can close these out, and instead of migrations, I'm going to go to seeders, and you can see we have a new file here called chat room seeder. Let's open that up. So what this file is going to do for us, we're going to be able to seed some data. We're just going to create some default chat rooms for our application right off the bat. So inside our seeder file, we want to bring in the facades DB. So we can say use illuminate /support /facades /db, and then a semicolon. Now we can use that down here. So we should be able to say db : table, and the name of the table for this seeder is going to be chat underscore rooms, because we want to create some default chat rooms. And then we should be able to say insert, and then pass it an array. Now the only column in our chat rooms table that we want to update is called name. So let's do name, and then we want to give it a default name. I'm just going to use general, and then close it off right here. Now we should be able to just duplicate this down, and I want to create a second default chat room, and we'll just call it tech talk, and then Command S to save. Now that we've created our seeder file with some information that we'd like to populate into our chat rooms table, let's go ahead and tell our database seeder file to run that. We can get rid of all this and we can say this call, we'll pass it an array, and we're just going to tell it to use the chat room seeder. So we can say chat room seeder : class. And then let's close it off right here with a semicolon. Command S to save, and we should be good for our database seeders. Now let's jump back over to our terminal and tell it to run this seeder for us. For that, there's a PHP artisan command. We should be able to say PHP artisan db seed. And we just seeded our database with that information. Let's go ahead and clear this out and jump back over to VS Code. I want to create some model relationships, so let's close these out. We should be able to minimize this, and let's open our app and then models, and let's create some relationships for our chat room first. So right after use has factory, I'm going to create a new public function, and we're just going to call it messages. So every chat room is going to have a relationship called messages, and that relationship is going to return, we can say this, and we'll use has many, and then we have to pass it the model that it has many of. So we should be able to say app/models chat message. So our chat room uses a has many relationship for chat message. And then let's go ahead and close that off and then Command S to save. Now let's do the same thing and create a few relationships for our chat message. Right after our user factory, we'll do public function, and our chat message is going to have a room relationship. Inside of that, we'll do return, and then this. Each chat message can only have one. So we'll say has one, and then we'll pass it the name of the model that it has one of. And for this, it will be app/models/chat room. And then we need to say how these are connected. For this, we can do ID and then chat room ID. Now that we've said our chat message can have one chat room, our chat message can also only have one user. So I'm going to duplicate this, and we'll change this to user. And then instead of app models chat room, we'll say app models user for the user model. And then instead of chat room ID, we can say user_ID. Go ahead and Command S to save that, and we should be good on our model relationships. So let's close out of this, and we'll jump back over to our terminal. Now that we've seeded some data into our application and we've created some models with relationships, let's go ahead and create a controller that can communicate with those database tables and models. For this, I'm going to use PHP artisan make controller, and then the name of the controller we want to create. For this, I'm just going to use chat controller and then press enter. I'll clear this out, and let's jump back over to VS Code. Now, if we minimize this and we go into HTTP controllers, we should see a new chat controller. The first thing I want to do is import my models. We'll say use app/models/chat room, and then we'll duplicate that down. And for the second one, we'll do chat message, and that should bring in our chat room model and our chat message model. And the next thing I want to bring in is use illuminate/support/facades/auth. Now let's go ahead and jump down into our class and create some functions. The first function I'm going to create is going to be the rooms function, because I just want to return all the rooms in our chat room table. So let's do public function rooms. We'll pass it the request. And for our public function rooms, let's just do return chat room : all. And that should be it. We just want to return all the rooms. If we really wanted to get crazy, we could paginate all the returns, but then this video would end up being much, much longer. So for right now, I'm just going to return all. After our public function rooms, let's create another function. And for this, we'll just do messages, because we want to return the messages. So we'll say public function messages. And again, we want to provide the request to our function. And then in addition to the request, I want to pass in the room ID. So when I create my route, I'm expecting to receive an ID at the end of it. And for that, I'm just going to use room ID. Now I can use the request received and the room ID received in the route. So let's go ahead and return chat message : where, and then we'll use chat underscore room underscore ID, and we want that chat room ID to match the room ID of the route. After that, we want to return it with, and we'll use the user because we created that user relationship. And then we want to order by, and we'll say we have a created underscore at column in our chat message table. So we want to order by the created at, and we'll say DESC for descending. I just paused the video. I don't realize this until later on, but I actually typed created wrong. I said it correctly out loud, but I only typed the word create. This should be created. I'm going to leave it in here for now so you can see how I debug this later on. But if you want to avoid this mistake, make sure you type created with a D at the end. And then let's just say get. Let's go ahead and create one more function. And for this is going to be the creation of a new message. So we'll say public function new message. We'll pass it in the request. And we'll also pass the room ID again. So this is the ID of the room that we want this new message to be posted to. Now inside of here, I'm going to use new message as a variable, and I'm going to set the equal to a new chat message. Now that I have the new chat message model, we should be able to say new message. And then for the user underscore ID, I want to set the equal to the auth : ID. And we pulled that in earlier up here when we said use Illuminate support facades auth. So we're going to set this new message user ID to whoever the authenticated user is that's currently sending us the message. After that, let's do new message, and then we're going to set a chat room ID for this incoming message. And for that, I'm just going to set it equal to the room ID of the incoming route that we pass in right here. And then close that off with a semicolon. And then the last thing we want to do is the message. So we'll say new message, and we'll set that equal to the request message. Now that we've set all the parameters, let's go ahead and save that. So we'll do new message, save, and then let's just return the new message. And that should be it for our controller. So Command S to save. Now let's jump over to our routes and create some endpoints to hit these controller functions. I'm going to go ahead and minimize these, and we're going to go down to our routes and then web. So in order to create some routes that go to our chat controller, first thing we need to do is bring it in so we can use it. So we'll do use app /http/controllers/chat controller. Now that we brought in our chat controller, let's go down here and add a few routes. The first route is going to be our chat rooms. We just want to grab all of our chat rooms. In order to do that, we'll use route : middleware, and then we want to use our auth : Sanctum, and then we need to provide our method. For this, we're going to use a get method. The first parameter this takes is our route. So we're going to use /chat/rooms because we want our URL to be the root domain /chat/rooms, and it wants to grab all rooms. The second parameter is going to be an array, and we need to pass it the chat controller : class. And then we'll put a comma, and the second part of this array is going to be the function within this controller that we want this route to access. For this, it's just going to be rooms for the rooms function. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this line, and we're going to do another get method. This second route is going to be our messages route. So instead of rooms plural, we want room singular, and then we want the room ID. So we'll say room ID inside of these curly braces, and then a slash, and then messages. We want this route to hit the chat controller, but instead of rooms, we want it to hit the messages function. So now we should have our root domain /chat/room and ID, which would be a number 1 or a number 2 or 3, and then /messages. Let's go ahead and create one more route. I'm just duplicating that row, and this time instead of get, we're going to use post. Now we want to post new messages. So we're going to use /chat/room. We want the room ID that we're posting it to, and then for this route, we'll use message. So /chat/room/ the room ID, we'll say room1 and then the word message because we're passing in a new message. We're going to use chat controller inside of our array, but this time instead of messages, we want it to hit the new message function, and that should be good. Command S to save. Now the only other thing I want to do in here is create another visual route. Right here you'll see we have this route to the dashboard. I want a new view for the chat. So I'm going to copy this and we're just going to duplicate this entire thing. This time, instead of dashboard, I want the chat view to be at the root domain /chat. I want to render, instead of dashboard, we're going to be creating a folder called chat/ and then a file called container.view. So we're telling it to render the chat/container, and we haven't created that yet, but we're going to in a minute. The other thing we want to do is instead of name dashboard, we want to rename this to name chat, and that should be good. So go ahead and Command S to save. At this point, I just want to jump back over to my application and make sure I haven't broken anything. I'm just coming back over here and I'm just going to refresh the page. Everything appears to be working, so we should be good to go. Now that I've created that /chat route, right now we're at /dashboard, but we just created a new route called /chat. I want to create a link right here that says chat. So let's go ahead and create those view files now that we have a route pointing at it. Let's jump back over to VS Code. We should be good with these, so I'm going to close this out. I'm going to close out my chat controller. We can minimize this and we can minimize app and we can minimize our routes. Now let's jump over into resources, JS, and then inside of pages, I'm going to create a new folder and I'm just going to call it chat. And inside of that folder, I'm going to create a new file called container.view. Now let's go ahead and give that the default scaffolding. So we'll do template and then let's also pass in some script tags. I'm going to go ahead and put some div tags in here that just says container. So I know this is the container. We'll Command S to save that. And I'm going to create some additional view files. I want to create a toggle or a way for users to switch between, so a chat room selection. So I'm going to create a new file and we'll call this chat room selection.view. And I'm going to copy the code from my container and I'm just going to paste it in here and we'll just say selection view and we'll Command S to save that. So now we have our container component, we have our chat room selection. I also want to create another view file for my messages container, somewhere for all my messages to live. Let's call that message container.view and we'll just paste in the same thing again and we'll just say message container. Command S to save that. I'm also going to have inside of my message container, I'm going to loop through all the messages in my chat room. So I want to create another component that just contains the message itself. And then we'll loop through that component and provide it some information. So let's create another component and we'll call this one message item.view. We'll paste in that same code and I'm just going to say message item and Command S to save that. The last thing I want to create is an input. We have to have somewhere to input our new message. So I want to create a component that holds the input for our chat. So we'll come back over here, we'll say new file, and this one we'll just call input message.view. We'll paste the same code in again, and we're just going to say input message. So now we have 5 new components. We just put some default scaffolding in here and we created our route, and that route points at this container.view file. But we haven't given our application a link to actually hit that file. Let's jump back over to our Google Chrome browser and see if we manually go to that route. If we put right here and we just say chat, we get our container. Cool, but we want it to match the rest of the website. So let's go back and open up VS Code. And since I want the container to match the entire look and layout of the dashboard, I'm just going to go ahead and copy all of this. We're going to go back up to our container.view and we're going to paste it all in. Now, instead of welcome, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this. And instead of our welcome, we're just going to say container because this is our container view. I can get rid of this component right here. And I'm going to remove this where it says dashboard. And we're just going to say chat because this is the heading at the top of the page. So Command S to save that. Let's go back over to our Google Chrome browser. Let's go back to our chat and we can see it looks the same as our dashboard, except it says chat and then we have our container. So we're hitting our container and our chat route works. Let's go ahead and add a link right here so we can hit this route from anywhere in our application. We'll jump back over to VS Code. Now, in order to change that link at the top, we can see we're using the app layout component. So let's go up here to our layouts. We can see it's in layouts and then app layout. So let's open that up, layouts, app layout, and I want to create an additional link. So right now we can see we have this link right here and then we have our route dashboard. Let's just duplicate that. So instead of dashboard, we're just going to say chat because we want the chat route. And instead of current dashboard, we'll change it to current chat. And then we'll change this right here to say chat as well. Now there's one other place in this code that contains a link. If we scroll down to the bottom, we should see right here, and this is our responsive navigation menu. We want this to also contain the link to our chat. So we'll duplicate that. We're going to do the same thing as above. We'll change the route to chat. We'll change current to chat, and we're going to change this right here to chat. Command S to save. And if you see right here, my Laravel mix build was successful. Let's jump back over to the Chrome browser. And now I have a new link up here for chat. I can navigate to dashboard, I can navigate to chat, and I'm hitting that file in chat/container. So now that my routing is all set up and we can hit this container, let's go ahead and create some of these Vue components. Let's jump back over to VS Code, and I'm going to close all these out since we don't need them open right now. Let's go ahead and add some of these components that we just created into our container view. I'm pretty sure my IDE should be smart enough. If I do message container, it automatically imported it right here. And then let's just do message container. And then let's also, right underneath of that, let's do input-message. We'll close that off. It imported my input message. And I just want to clean this up a little bit. And that should be good. We'll Command S to save. Now, if we go back over to our Chrome browser, we see our message container and our input message. Let's go back over to VS Code and build out these views. Before we can go ahead and build the views, there's a few things we need to do first. When this page is loaded, we want to go ahead and we want to grab all of the rooms that are available to our chat application. So let's go down here and create a new method. Right after components, we'll do methods. And let's just create a new method called getRooms. And this is just going to get all the rooms available in that rooms table that we created earlier. We're going to use Axios for this. So let's do axios.get. And our route should be /chat/rooms. Then we want to do something with the response. So we'll use our arrow functions. When we get our response, we want to save the chat rooms. So let's go back up here. And before we do anything, let's create some data properties. So we're going to pass in a function, and then we're going to return our properties. So for the first property, we'll just do chat rooms because we need somewhere to store the rooms when we hit this API endpoint. We plan on receiving these rooms as an array. So we'll just say that it's an array. Put a comma here so it doesn't yell at us anymore. I'm going to Command S to save that. We're probably also going to want to set a current room. So let's just do current room. By default, we'll just pass it an empty array. And then we haven't done this yet, but we're also going to want to grab the messages for the current room. So I'm just going to create another data property and call it messages. And that's also just going to be an empty array. And we'll put a comma right there and Command S to save. So now that we have these data properties, let's do this get rooms and let's set the response to this.chatRooms, and we'll set it equal to response.data. So now when we receive this response, it's going to take the response data, which is hopefully all of our chat rooms, and save it in this data property of chat rooms right here. The next thing we want to do is we want to set a default room. When our chat page opens, there's no default, so it's just going to grab all the rooms. By default, I'm just going to set that to whatever the first room is in the response that we receive. But I want to do that in a separate method. So let's go down here and we'll do set room, and we're going to receive a room, and we want to set the current room. So that should be this.current room, and we want to set it to the room that we receive. So now that we have this method down here, let's go ahead and we should be able to say this.setRoom, and we want to set it to the response.data and then the first value it receives. So we'll just set the data array to 0, and that should set the current room. And then let's just catch our error. We'll do catch error with an arrow function, and we'll just console.log the error and Command S to save. Now that we have this method of get rooms, we haven't told our application to fire this method yet. So let's use the created and tell it to this.getRooms. So now whenever our application loads, for the first time when it creates this container view, we're telling it to this.getRooms. It's going to go up here to our get rooms. It's going to fire off our Axios get method, and it's going to save all of the chat rooms available to us, and it's going to set a current room for us. So let's Command S to save that. Since we're receiving our current room, we want to let our input up here. So when a user does some input, we want to let this input know which room it's for. So let's go ahead and we'll do room, and this is going to be a prop on the input message component. So let's say room equals current room. So we're passing it all of the data that's inside of this current room when we set the current room. So let's Command S to save that, and let's just add that prop into our input message. So right down here after export default, we'll say props, and we'll just say room. So now we know that we're receiving this prop of the room, and we'll Command S to save that. The next thing we want to do is when we change a room or when we receive our current room, we want to get all the messages for that room. So let's add another method down here. We'll do it right after set room, and we'll just do get messages. We're going to use Axios again, and it's going to be a get request. And this time we're going to hit a different route. So we'll do /chat/room, and then we'll do plus this.currentRoom.id because we want the ID of the current room. We said we were going to pass a room ID when we hit this route. So we'll do this.currentRoom.id plus, and then we can do /messages. Then with the response, we'll do response, and we'll use an arrow function. And since we created this messages data property up here, let's set the response to this.messages equals response.data. So set the messages to the response data that we receive. And then let's also do a catch down here, and we'll do error arrow function, and we'll console.log error. Command S to save. So now we can get rooms, we can set our current room, and we can get messages for our current room. But we haven't actually fired off our get messages yet. So when we set our current room, let's also say get messages. So we'll do this.get messages. So whenever the current room is set, get the messages for that current room. Now let's jump back over to Google Chrome and make sure we don't have any errors. So let's pull up our developer tools, and we're getting a 500 internal server error. Let's go over to our network. I'm going to refresh this, and on our messages, column not found, unknown column create at. So this is actually incorrect. This should be created with a D right here at. Let's jump back over to VS Code, and we'll go up to our app, HTTP controllers, chat controller. And right here, we want created at. I typed that wrong previously. I probably should have checked this, but I didn't. Command S to save that. And let's jump back over to Chrome, and we'll refresh this page. And hopefully messages, we get an empty array because there's no messages yet. Our rooms, we're receiving all of our rooms, so that's good. And let's click on view. We'll do inertia, and we'll expand that. And we have our container. We have our current room, so we set our current room. We received our chat rooms array, and we can see that right here. So everything looks like it's good to go. I'm going to close this out right now. Now that we're able to receive our rooms, let's go ahead and create the input message so that we can add new messages for that room. Jump back over to VS Code. I can close this out. Back in our container, let's scroll back up, and we are passing the input message the current room. So our input message is receiving a prop of room. Let's go ahead and create this component so that we're able to add new messages for whatever the current room we're in. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this because this was just to help me get things set up. So this time we'll do div, we'll set a class. We're using Tailwinds for this, and I already went ahead and wrote down some loose class stylization. So I'm just going to roll with that. We'll do relative h-10 and m-1. We'll close that off, and let's close off our div. Now I want to add a border to the top of my input message because I want to create a little separation between the input box and the messages above. And I did that with raw CSS. Feel free to go back and change this up to make it look however you want, but I'm going to use style, and I'm going to set that equal to border top, and we'll say 1px solid, and I'm using E6, 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 which is a light gray. After that, I'm going to set a class, and we'll set that equal to grid, and then grid-calls-6. And then let's close that off as well. And let's put our input inside of here. Input, and I'm going to do type text. We actually need to create a data property to attach this with a V model. I'm going to type it in right now, and then we'll add it below. So we'll do v-model, and we're going to set that equal to message. We're also going to create a method below. I want the user, when they press the enter key, I want them to be able to press enter to send the message instead of having to click a button. We're going to add a button too, but I want the enter key to send the message. So we'll do @keyUp.enter, and then whatever the method name is. So we didn't create it yet, but we're going to call it send message. We're also going to do a placeholder of, say, something ... Let's also give this a class, and we'll use call-span-5. We'll do outline-none. That removes the focus border, and a p-1 for padding. And then let's close this off, and our text editor is done yelling at us. So we also want to add a button in here. So we'll do button, and we're going to do @click for our button. And when the user clicks the button, we want to do the same thing. So send message. We're also going to add some class styling. So we'll do class equals, and we'll do place-self-end. We're going to do bg-gray-500, and then we're going to add a hover color. So when they hover over the button, it changes color. In Tailwinds, we can do that with hover::blue-700. And then we'll add a p-1 for some padding. We'll add an mt-1 for margin top. We're going to change it to rounded so the button has some rounded corners, and let's do text-white. We'll close that off. Our button is just going to say send, and then let's close that off at the end. I'm going to clean this up a little bit. We'll just push that over, and I'm going to pull this back. So there we go. We have our input and we have our button. I'm going to Command S to save, and let's create this vModel message property down here. So right after props, we'll do data and function, and that's going to return our data properties. So our only data property in here right now is message, and I'm just going to set it blank by default. We also need to create our send message method. So right after data, let's go ahead and add some methods. And we said we're going to call this send message. If you want to do some more form validation, feel free. I'm trying to keep this quick and simple. So I'm just going to say if this dot message is equal to nothing, we'll just do return. So if they didn't put anything in the message box, don't allow them to press the send button. After that, we're going to use Axios with a post request. So we'll say axios.post. We want to hit /chat/room/ and then the room ID, which we're passing in with this props room. So we should be able to say plus this dot room dot ID plus /message. After that, we want to pass it some data. So we're going to say message : and then this dot message to pass it this message right here that we're using vbind to bind our input with. So we're going to send whatever's in the input. After that, we want to check and make sure our response was successful. So let's do .then, and we'll do response with an arrow function. And I'm just going to say if response.status = 201. So if it was a successful creation, let's reset the message back to nothing. So we'll do this dot message equals and then nothing. After we reset the message back to nothing, we probably want to emit an event back to our parent component to say, hey, this message was sent successfully. If you need to do anything when messages were sent successfully, go ahead and do that. So I'm going to use this and then $emit, and I'm just going to say message sent because we sent a message and it was successful. We want to let our parent component know that that happened. After that, let's do .catch. Let me just scroll down a little and we'll do error. We'll use an arrow function and we'll do console log error and then Command S to save. Let's jump back over to Google Chrome and see if we're able to send a message successfully. So let's go ahead and type something in here. We'll just do this is a test. When we hover over, we're getting our blue, but we should be able to just press enter. And we can see our text went away. Let's check our Chrome developer tools and we'll go to network. I'm going to refresh this again and we'll just say another test. And we want to check for a network event down here. So we'll press enter and we can see we hit message it went to our chat/room/the room ID of 1, and we posted this new message. Let's check our response, and we received the new message response that we set earlier in our controller. So this is good. We're able to send messages for the current room that we're in. I'm going to close this out. Now let's make sure that we can display messages in here in our message container. So let's jump back over to VS Code. I want to go ahead and create this emit event on our parent component, which is the container.view. We're calling it message sent, so I'm just going to copy that. Let's go back over to our container, and right here in our input message, after our current room, let's use v-on, and we'll use our message sent. And whenever a message is sent, we want to fire off the get messages method. And since we already created that method down here, right here, this should fire automatically for us. So let's Command S to save. I'm going to go back to, we'll jump back over to Chrome. Let's open up our developer tools, and we'll go to our network tab, and we'll just type hello. This time we're expecting 2 network events. So let's go ahead and press enter. And we have our 2 network events. We have our message, which is our post. If we come over here to our headers, this is our post. And then we have our messages. This is our GET request when we're asking for all the messages for this chat room in particular. So let's close that out. Now that we're able to send messages and we're able to pull them from our backend, let's go ahead and display some messages right here in our message container. Let's jump back over to VS Code. And this time, we're setting all of the messages right here. When we get messages, we're setting them all right here in our data property. So let's pass that as a prop to our message container. We'll do messages, and we'll pass that as messages. Command S to save. Now our message container is receiving all of these messages. Let's go ahead and build this message container view. So over here on our message container, we should be able to get rid of this. And I've already wrote down some general Tailwind CSS for this. So we're just going to do div class, we'll set that equal to h-96 and w-full, which will make this expand the full width of the container. So let's close that out, and let's also do div class, and we're going to set that to h-full for the height, full height. We'll do a p-2, and then flex, we'll do flex-call-reverse, because we want this to be at the bottom of our div. And then we'll also do overflow-scroll. And now we want all of our messages to show up inside of here. So this flex reverse is going to reverse the order of our messages to show up with the newest message at the bottom. So now that our message container is set up, we want to loop through all of our messages. Before we can do that, we need to receive the messages from our parent as a prop. So let's set that prop, and we said we're going to pass it in as messages. So now that we have this prop of messages and we pass that in right here using this, we should be able to use it in our message container. In order to do that, we're going to use a div and then a v-4 because we want to loop through all these messages. Inside of our v4, we're going to do message, comma, index, because we want to create an index for all of these, and then in messages. Now we can set a key set to our index. So now we're looping through all of our messages, and each time it loops through, it creates this variable for us called message, and we can access all of the properties inside of each individual message. We're also creating an index for each one, and then we're setting our key for each item to index. Now that we've looped through, we want to use that message item that we created earlier inside of our message container. So let's go ahead and we'll say message-item, and you can see my IDE automatically said import message item from message item.view, and it set this components right here to an object of message item. So let's go ahead and pass the message properties to our message item. So let's say message equals message. So now our message item is receiving the individual message each time we loop through. Let's save that, and let's finish creating this message item view. And this should be super simple. First thing I want to do is I want to add the prop. So we'll say props, and we're receiving it, and we called it message. So now we have access to this property of message. Inside of our div, I'm going to delete the message item in here. We'll just use the mustache tags here, and we'll say message.user.name. I'm just going to do a colon and then the mustache tags again, and we'll say message.message, and then let's save that. Now if we jump back over to Google Chrome, we should see some new messages. And there we go. We've reversed our list, so our newest message is showing up at the bottom. Let's try this again. Hi there. So when we said hi there, it told our parent component, container.view, hey, a message was sent. Go grab all the messages again. When it grabbed all the messages again, it passed all the messages to our message container.view. And then that message container.view looped through all messages again. Now that this is all working, let's go ahead and finish that chat room selection view so that we can toggle between different chat rooms. So let's open up VS Code again, and we're going to go back into our container, and I want to put the chat room selection at the top. So right now we just have a heading or a title that says chat. Let's change that so that it uses our chat room selection. So we'll do chat room selection. It automatically imported it down for me. I'm going to tab that over and it automatically brought it down here. So we've imported it. For the chat room selection, let's close that off. First thing I want to do is I don't want to provide a selection if there's no rooms to select from. So I'm going to use a v-if. I'm going to set it equal to current room dot ID. So if there's a current room and there's an ID, allow this to be shown. So that's assuming there's at least one room and it's set to current. After we check if there's a current room ID, we want to pass all the rooms as a prop to our chat room selection component. So let's do rooms and set that equal to chat rooms, since we're storing that right here. So we can pass the chat rooms and we're passing it as a prop called rooms. Let's also pass the current room and we'll set that equal to current room. The next thing I want to do is I want to watch for an event. This chat room selection is actually going to be a drop down menu that we're going to create. So I want to know when a user chooses another option in the drop down menu. So I'm going to use v-on and we're going to set that to room changed. So we're going to listen for a room changed event and we'll set that equal to set room, and we want to pass it the room that we want to set it to. And for this, we're just going to say event. We're going to pass the room as the event. Since we've already created this set room down here, we should be good to go. We just have to pass it the room that it needs. Now that this is created, I'm going to Command S to save that, and let's jump over to our chat room selection view. So the first thing I want to do is I want to bring in the props. So we said we're going to have rooms as well as current room. We're going to receive both of those as props. The next thing I want to do is I want to provide some data. We'll do function and return, and I want to return selected as a data property, because when we create this drop-down list, I want to know what is selected. So we're going to use vModel to bind that to this selected data property. Now that we have some data, let's go ahead and do created. When this component is created, I want to set this dot selected, and I want to set it to the current room. So whatever we pass as a prop to the current room, I want to set that to the selection on the drop-down box. So we should be able to say this dot current room, and that should be good. So we'll save that and let's redo this up here. Now I already have a general idea for some Tailwinds CSS that I'm going to use for this. So for the first div, we're going to say class equals, and we'll do grid and then grid-calls-2. We'll close that off and we'll close off our div. And for the next one, I want to keep the name of the chat room that's selected to the left-hand side of the screen. Previously, it just said chat. I want to say the name of the room and then the word chat. So for that, we're going to use div. We'll use class and we'll do font-bold text-XL. We'll close that off and then let's close off our div. And then in here, we'll use some mustache tags and we'll just say selected.name. So whatever selected is set to, grab the name and display that over here. And then after that, put the word chat. So if we have general chat selected, it's going to say general and then the word chat. After that, we'll do another div. And then let's go ahead and close this div off. And then inside of that, I want to do select. On the next line, we'll do v-model, and we'll set that equal to our selected data property we created. We want to emit an event. We want that event to happen at change. So when this changes, then fire the event. So we can say $emit parentheses, and then inside of those parentheses, the first thing we want to say is the name of the event. And we want to fire the room changed event. And what do we want to do when that fires? We want to pass selected. So whatever the new selected room is, we want to pass that back to our event watcher on our parent component. So we'll say selected. On the next line, I'm just going to float this to the right so that this drop-down box is on the right-hand side of the screen. The name of the chat is on the left-hand side. And I can close that off, and then let's close off our select. Now inside of our select statement, we're going to use option with v4. So we can loop through the list of options for our drop-down box. So we'll do option, and then on the next line, we'll say v-4. And we're going to set that equal to, and we can say room, comma, index in rooms. And then we need to provide a key. So we'll say key equals, and we'll set that to the index. Let's close this so it stops yelling at me. So now we're going to loop through all the rooms. Each time we loop through, we'll have access to this room object. And each time we loop through, it's going to give us a new index. So each time it'll be key 1, the next time it'll be key 2, key 3, and so on. We want to set the value. So we'll say value equals, and we'll just say room. So the entire object of room. And then down here, let's close this off. And for the option, we need to provide some type of name or identifier so we know what option we're picking. So we'll use the mustache tags, and inside we'll say room.name. So let's save that. And we should have our title and drop-down box in our Chrome browser. So let's go take a look. So now we have general and tech talk. If I click this, it should automatically change the text down here. It'll actually probably go blank since there's nothing inside of tech talk yet, but let's try. Cool. It changed our Tech Talk title up here. It changed this so it's no longer saying anything. And now we're back in our general chat. Now that everything's connected, we can do the last piece, which is include Pusher in our project, which will handle the real-time notifications for us. To get Pusher set up, let's go ahead over to pusher.com and create an account, or at least get signed in. So if you don't have an account already, go ahead and click sign up and go through the process. I'm going to use sign in, and I'm just going to sign in with my GitHub account. I'm going to use channels for this, so I'm just going to click get started for channel. Now that I'm inside of channels, I'm going to create a new app. For this, I'm just going to call it chat app. For my cluster, US2 is fine, and you could create multiple environments. If you were going to have a development environment, a staging environment, a production environment, you would use this. We're just doing this as a demo in our local environment, so it doesn't really matter. For front end, I'm going to select Vue. For back end, I'll select Laravel. And let's do create app. They give us some demo code that we could copy and paste into our application, but we're not going to use any of that. So let's just click on app keys. So this is what I'm really interested in. I want to copy this app ID, and let's jump back over to VS Code. I should be able to close out most of this for right now. We'll end up coming back to these later. And we'll minimize this, and what I really want to look at is our .env file. So at the bottom, we have this pusher app ID. Let's paste in that app ID. Let's go back to Chrome, and we need our pusher app key, our app secret. Let's copy our key. We'll paste our key in. We'll go back to Chrome. We'll copy our secret. We'll paste our secret in. And I believe our cluster was US2, but let's just double check that. And it was US2. The other thing I want to do in here is we need to change the broadcast driver. Instead of log, we want to change it to pusher. And then that should be good. So go ahead and save that env file. There's one other thing I want to point out. If we jump back over to Chrome and we go to our app settings. Now, if you've used Pusher before, there's a new feature in here, and this actually threw me through a loop when I was recording this video. They have this enable authorized connections. What this is it says closes connections which fail to subscribe to a private presence channel within a timeout. Before enabling this, ensure a client subscribes to at least one private or presence channel. Now, this is a security feature. Sometimes in Pusher, if you weren't using private or presence channels, anybody could kind of hop onto your channel because you're not checking for authentication. Somebody could find out what that link was and they could occupy a connection. With Pusher, we're using a free account, which I believe is up to 100 connections. But if somebody was to find out that free account and the URL that you're using, they could occupy a connection, and we don't want that. So we're going to toggle this on. So enable authorized connections. Now, it's important to know that when you do that, you're saying that you have to create a private or presence channel within a certain timeout. So when we create this channel, we want to make sure that it's a private channel or a presence channel, and we have to check for authorization into that channel. Once you're inside of our application, you can use any channel you want, but we're making sure that you're an authorized connection before getting in there. I'm going to leave the rest of these settings as the default. You could come in if you wanted to allow client events or force TLS. It's up to you. Since this is just a demo, I just wanted to give a general understanding of what this app settings is and why you should probably at least enable authorized connections. And you can see our app was updated successfully. Now that this is all set up, let's go back to our Laravel app and we'll go back into VS Code. Since we have our environment file set up, we shouldn't have to look at this again. I've already saved it, so I'm going to close out of this. The next thing I want to do is I want to go into our config and then app. Now I need to scroll down and find broadcast service provider. So right here, this by default is commented out. We're going to be using this, so go ahead and uncomment that. Command S to save, and that should be good. We can close this file. The next thing I want to do is I want to open up the terminal again, and we want to use Composer to require pusher. So let's do Composer require pusher / pusher -php -server, and then we'll use a tilde 4.0 and close your quotations. Now that we've required it for Composer, let's clear this out. Now let's do npm install -- save laravel - echo space pusher -js. All right, I'm going to clear this out again. Now let's get pusher set up on our front end. So let's open up VS Code again. This time we can minimize this, and inside of our resources, JS, we have this bootstrap file. At the bottom of this file, we have this import echo pusher. Highlight all this, and we'll remove the comments. So we just want to make sure that all of this is uncommented, and we really don't have to do anything else here. So just Command S to save. What this does is it sets up pusher and Laravel echo on our front end. Now, if you're wondering what this process key env mix pusher app key, if we go back into our .env file, that's this right here. So we're actually passing our pusher app key, this, to our front end in this mix pusher app key variable. So let's close that out. This should be good to go. We don't have to change anything else here, so you can go ahead and close this. The next thing I want to do is I want to open up our webpack.mix.js, and I just want to require one additional thing in here. I'm going to do require parentheses and then .env, and then outside we'll do .config and then some ending parentheses, and then save that. This is so that it can process the .env environment variables. So that should be good to go. We can close out of that. Now that we have pusher set up, we want to create an event and a listener. To do that, we're going to go up to app providers, and then inside of our event service provider, we're going to add some additional event listener mappings. So for that, we'll do app/events/ and we want to call this event new chat message. So when a new chat message happens, that's going to be an event, and we want to listen for that. I don't know if we're definitely going to use this listener, but let's go ahead and create it, and if this video doesn't get too long, we'll try and squeeze it in. So our listener is going to be, we'll put that inside of an array. The reason this is inside of an array is because you can have multiple things listening for this. For instance, if we had a new chat message, and every time a new chat message happened, we wanted multiple things to be triggered. We could trigger an email, we could trigger an in-app notification, we could trigger a text message notification. But for this, we're going to create a listener, and we're going to call it app/listeners/send chat message notification. And that should be good. So Command S to save. And now we want to generate these files, and we can do that with the PHP artisan command. So let's jump back over into the terminal. Now we can do PHP artisan event : generate, and then press enter. And now you can see events and listeners generated successfully. So let's go ahead and check those out. Back in VS Code, we have now event new chat message.php. So let's go ahead and modify this event. First thing I want to do is I want to say use app/models/chat message, because I want to bring that in. Now that I've done that, let's go ahead right down here under use dispatchable. We'll do public, and then we'll create this new variable called chat message. Come down here into our construct, and we can say chat message and set that to the variable chat message. And then we'll do this chat message equals chat message. The next thing I want to do is implements and then should broadcast. So we'll copy that and we'll paste that right here. Now let's go down to our broadcast on. By default, it already has this return new private channel and then a channel name. We're going to change that and we're going to call our channel chat period. And then after the period, we want to provide this chat message and then chat room ID. So we want our channel name to be chat period and then the number 1 or the number 2 or whatever the ID is. So Command S to save that, and we should be done with this file. Now that we've created this event, let's go ahead and use it. So I'm going to close out of this new chat message. I can close out of this event service provider, and let's open up our HTTP controllers and then our chat controller. Now that we created an event, let's use it in our chat controller. So we'll do app/events/new chat message. And since we brought it in, I'm just going to copy this. And now down here on our new message, right before our return, we want to fire off this event. So we're going to say broadcast and then new chat message. And then the message we want to broadcast is new message. And since we're using this broadcast, we can say to others. What that's going to do is it's only going to send this event to other people. It's not going to notify me about the event since I'm the one that triggered the event. So go ahead and Command S to save that. And we should be done inside this chat controller. Now that we've created an event with a broadcast and a channel, let's go ahead and add that to our route channels. So down here under routes, we have this channels.php. Now we want to bring in authentication. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this and just say auth. So we have illuminate, support, facades, and then auth. Now that we've brought in auth, we can use it down here. I'm going to duplicate this again too. And for right here, we're going to change the channel to chat since we know we want it to be chat period and then room ID. We want the ID of the room, and that's how we're naming the chat channel. So chat period 1, chat period 2, and so on. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to pass in the room ID right here. We could have left it as ID. I'm just being more specific. We could have just said ID, but at least now we know if somebody else looks at this, we're passing in the room ID. The next thing we want to do is we want to get rid of this and we're going to do our authentication. So let's do if auth : check. So if this user is authorized, we're going to return an array, and inside that array, we'll do the ID of the user. So we can say user ID, and then the second parameter we want to return is the name and the username. So we'll say user name, and then close that off. We could use the room ID above that we're passing in to check and see if the user has permission to access this specific room. But we don't care what room they're accessing as long as they're authorized within our application. And that should be good. So we're doing our check if the user's authorized. Go ahead and return this array that contains an ID for the user ID and a name for the username. Go ahead and save that, and this file should be good. Now let's jump back over to our front end, and we'll go in our resources, JS, and then pages, chat, and we want to open up our container.vue again. Now that we set up all our pusher connections and we created our pusher account, we set up our env file, we added our broadcast and our events, let's go ahead and configure this file to use pusher WebSockets. To do that, I'm going to create a new method down here. So right inside of methods, I'm just going to create a new one called connect. Now inside of our connect method, I'm going to say if this.currentRoom.id. So if there's a current room ID set, let's do something. The first thing I'm going to do is I'll say let VM equal this. The next thing I want to do is on connect, I want to get messages. So we're going to change this around a little bit. So instead of set room get messages, I'm going to get messages right inside of this connect method. So we'll say this.getMessages. Then we'll do window.echo.private, since this is going to be a private channel, chat period, and then plus this.currentRoom.id, because we know the name of the channel has to be chat period and then a room ID. Then we can say dot listen, and then we're going to listen for an event called new message. We didn't set that up yet. I'm going to go back into the event file and do that momentarily. Now what listen is, it wants to listen for a specific event on this channel. There can be multiple types of events, but for this, we want to listen for a new message. So for that, I'm going to do period message period new. And then we'll just say arrow function vm.get messages. Now I want to watch for the current room, and I want to say if it changes, fire off this connect method. So right after data, we'll say watch, and then we can say watch for the current room. And if it changes, we want to fire off the this.connect. So connect to whatever the new room is. I'm going to Command S to save this, and let's jump back over to our Chrome browser and see how this is looking. So I want to bring up my Chrome developer tools, and I'm going to click on Network tab. I also still am logged into Pusher, so if we come back over here and we click on Debug Console, we should see network events as they happen right here. So I'm going to click on Laravel again. We're going to look for some network activity, and then we want to check out the Debug Console. So let's do Command R to refresh, and we can see we have this WebSocket right here. We also have this other WebSocket, initial subscription succeeded, and Pusher subscribe. So it looks like we've connected and we've authorized over here, and we have this WebSocket. We go over to our debug console for Pusher. We can see that we have this connection, authorized, subscribed, and now it's occupied, and we're in private -chat period 1. Because we used an echo private channel, it automatically put the private dash before the chat period 1. So let's go back over to Laravel. I'm going to go ahead and close the developer tools. Now that we know that we can authorize a user and subscribe to a specific chat channel or room, we want to make sure we disconnect from a channel when we use our chat room selector up here. So if I select Tech Talk, I want to make sure I unsubscribe from general. So let's go back over to VS Code. To disconnect, I'm going to create a new method down here. Right after connect, we'll add a new method. We'll call it disconnect. For our disconnect method, I want to pass in the room we want to disconnect from. And then in order to disconnect, we'll do window.echo.leave, and then we want to tell it what room we want to leave or disconnect from. For this, we'll use chat period, and then we'll say plus room ID, and then close it off. Now that we have a disconnect method, we want to come up here to our watch current room, and we want to see if this user was previously subscribed to a room before changing to the new current room. For that, I'm going to pass in val, which is the new value, and then old val, which is the old value. And this will provide me the old value if the user was previously subscribed to a room prior to the current room changing. So right before our this.connect, we want to do a check. We'll say if old val.id. So if the old value or the old room has an ID, we want to run our method. So this.disconnect. And then inside of this.disconnect, we want to pass it the old room, or in this case, the old val, which is the old room. Command S to save that. And let's jump back over into Chrome and test this out. Let's go back into our debug console. I want to go ahead and refresh this so that we have a clean slate, and we'll go back into Laravel. Now, if I refresh the page and we look at our debug console, we can see we've authorized, subscribed, and occupied. Now we want to see if we change this general to Tech Talk, we see our Tech Talk chat changed. We're not showing any messages because there's no messages in this room yet. And we want to check our debug console. And now we can see that we unsubscribed from channel private chat 1. We vacated, and now we've subscribed to channel private chat 2, and it's currently occupied. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. When we leave one channel, we unsubscribe from any notifications, and we subscribe to the new channel notifications. Let's go back over to Laravel. And at this point, everything should be connected and working. The only thing we haven't tested is 2 users talking back and forth in the browser. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to use a different browser for this. And for that, I brought up Safari. So we don't actually have another user yet. So I'm going to do register, and I'm going to create a new user. Now that our new user's logged in, let's go over to chat, and we're currently in the Tech Talk channel. So I'm going to switch over to Tech Talk, and then let's zoom in so that we can see this. And now I'm going to say something with this new user account, and we're hoping to see it pop up over here on the screen. So let's try, this is a test. Great. So our new user popped up automatically. We didn't have to refresh the screen. Let's say something back from Scriptster to our new user. We'll say, go subscribe now. Awesome. So our chat is working. We're able to send messages in both directions. Let's switch back to our general chat. It switches out for both of our users. We'll say hello, and our new user popped up over here on my Scriptster side, and we'll say, hello. So at this point, our chat application is all working. We're able to send messages from multiple users in multiple chat rooms. Feel free to go in and change the stylization of this. I didn't want to go crazy on CSS because I feel like that can really occupy a lot of the time. And I really just wanted to show you guys how to get real-time chat working. Style this however you want. Use this as a template to build something even better. Maybe if you want, go ahead and add the ability for users to create additional chat rooms. We seeded these 2 chat rooms just to get started, but maybe add a button, allow them to create their own room, give it a name, and let them communicate in that new room. If you haven't already, go ahead, like, subscribe, hit the little bell icon so you get notifications, and I'll see you in the next video.